tournament in 2008. She was one of the Gilliano girls that were caddies that I pawned them off as caddies through the highest bidders. She was so loved, and you know, good for her. You know, I'm laughing because I'm like, good for her. I mean, she met the prince. You know, and she made a great life for herself. Good for her.
I've had the fairy tale now with the baby.
She's got the fairy tale now with the baby. But good for her. I mean, Jesus, she's She's everything you're not supposed to be. Multi-ethnic, and she's been married. She already has a kid from someone, or divorced. I mean, everything you're not supposed to be in a.
Whispers have always surrounded Meghan Markle's past, but this one goes beyond the usual palace gossip. For years, speculation has circled around the claim that Meghan may have become a mother long before the world knew her as the Duchess of Sussex. The story traces back to her college days at Northwestern University, where rumours suggest she already carried a secret family connection. The narrative begins with her early relationships. At just 13, Meghan had her first boyfriend, Joshua Silverstein. Later, she grew close to Joe Giuliano, a young man who would become central to these claims. Reports allege that Meghan and Joe tied the knot when she was barely out of her teens, and that not long after, a baby girl entered the picture. According to those whispers, a child named Noel was born around 1999. The timing lines up with Meghan's late teenage years, and some say Noel carries a striking resemblance to Meghan herself. These rumours have followed Meghan ever since, lingering in the background as she built her image as Hollywood starlet, royal bride and global celebrity. But if true, this story would mean far more than a hidden romance. It would mean Meghan has spent decades keeping one of the most explosive secrets imaginable, a daughter who, as of today, is 30 years old.
Is there an inherent tension in trying to be relatable while also being a duchess?
No. No, I don't find, I'm just being myself. So I think probably it was different several years ago where I couldn't be as vocal and I had renewed pantyhose all the time. Let's be honest, that was not very myself. I hadn't seen pantyhose since movies in the 80s when they came in the little egg. That felt a little bit inauthentic, but that's a silly example. But it is an example of when you're able to dress the way you want to dress and you're able to say the things that are true and you're able to show up in the space really organically and authentically. That's being comfortable in your own skin. And that's, of course, had different chapters in my life. But right now, no, I don't feel that I need to prove anything.
Las Vegas has always been the backdrop for questionable choices, but in Meghan's case, the rumours suggest something far more serious than a spur-of-the-moment gamble. The story goes that Meghan and Joe Giuliano didn't just date, they allegedly walked down a courthouse aisle in the neon capital of the world. This wasn't a glamorous Hollywood elopement with flashing cameras, but a low-key ceremony with only 2 family members present. The marriage, however, didn't last. Within months, annulment papers were reportedly filed. And here's where the mystery deepens. In a city famous for preserving every Elvis-themed vow and drunken celebrity divorce, Meghan's supposed records are locked away, sealed, untouchable, and hidden from public view. That detail has always raised eyebrows. Courts don't hide paperwork out of kindness. They do it when there's something explosive inside. So the question is, what was in those papers? A short-lived teenage marriage is one thing, but the timing of the annulment, paired with the whispers of a pregnancy, has fueled suspicions that the documents might contain far more than a failed relationship. If Meghan's missing year involved not just a secret wedding, but also the birth of a child, then the sealed records begin to look less like routine privacy and more like the cornerstone of a cover-up. And while Meghan would later present herself to the world as a fresh-faced college student free of baggage, critics argue this missing chapter paints an entirely different picture, one that threatens to unravel her carefully crafted image. By the mid-1990s, the whispers take a dramatic turn. Instead of the carefree gap year Meghan has often referenced, some say she was dealing with a far more life-changing reality, a pregnancy. According to these claims, her brief marriage to Joe Giuliano didn't end with just an annulment. It ended with the arrival of a baby girl. The story suggests that in 1995, Meghan gave birth to a daughter, a child who was never publicly acknowledged. Rather than raising her, Meghan is said to have handed the responsibility over to the Giuliano family. No adoption paperwork, no official record, just a quiet arrangement that erased the baby from Meghan's own timeline. While Meghan prepared for college, the Giulianos allegedly raised the girl as one of their own, keeping her identity away from public view. What makes this theory so compelling to many is how neatly it fits into Meghan's pattern of reinvention. One minute she's a struggling actress, the next she's a duchess. One moment, connections with family are strong, the next they're cut off completely. For critics, it feels all too consistent that a child might have been another piece of her past, quietly edited out of the script. And now, decades later, that hidden daughter would no longer be a rumour of the past. She would be a grown woman, 30 years old, with her own life and her own story to tell. A living reminder of a chapter Meghan may have worked tirelessly to bury. When Meghan Markle arrived at Northwestern University, it was as though she'd pressed reset on her entire life. Gone were any traces of a teenage marriage, whispers of an annulment, or even rumours of a baby. She stepped onto campus polished, confident, and seemingly free of baggage, selling the image of an ambitious student ready to chase her dreams. To classmates and professors, she appeared like any other aspiring actress, full of drive and determination. But for those who look back now, that clean slate seems almost too perfect. The so-called gap year that should have been filled with travel and self-discovery left behind no photos, no receipts, no stories from friends. Instead, it was a blank page. One that conveniently made it easier to replace a messy reality with a marketable narrative. Observers say this is where Meghan's long pattern of reinvention truly began. Like cutting scenes from a movie, she erased what didn't fit the image she wanted to present. A teenage husband? Gone. A sealed annulment? Forgotten. A daughter raised elsewhere? Never mentioned. In her place stood a bright young woman with no past shadows, just an open road to Hollywood and, later, royalty. It wasn't simply reinvention, it was total erasure. And for critics, this calculated reset explains why questions about her missing years still linger. Because, while Meghan's official story sounds inspiring, the gaps in her past suggest something much deeper may have been intentionally hidden. For years, Meghan's new identity seemed airtight. She rose from student to actress, then from Hollywood starlet to royal bride. But while her public image grew, the whispers never fully disappeared. Friends connected to the Giuliano family would drop careful hints over the years, never full confessions, but enough to spark questions. Each time the story was eerily consistent: a teenage wedding, a sealed annulment, and a hidden daughter. Individually, those whispers might be brushed aside as idle gossip, the kind of rumour that clings to public figures like static. But when pieced together, they stopped sounding like background noise and began to form a mosaic too sharp to ignore. Different voices, different circles, yet always circling back to the same version of events. And if there was one thing Meghan Markle couldn't fully control, it was the scattered fragments of other people's memories. She could cut ties with relatives, freeze out old friends, and block anyone who didn't fit the narrative she curated. What she could never silence were the quiet recollections, the half-forgotten conversations, and the inconvenient stories that kept finding their way into the public sphere.
Okay.
What else? You have lots of burning questions.
I have lots of burning questions. What have you learned about yourself since becoming Sussex?
Well, interesting. What I learned about myself is no matter what my name is or what people call me, I'm still the same person. So that didn't change who I am. And maybe that's probably the biggest distinguishing factor.
Give me a tutorial on royal naming conventions. So, like, are you Meghan Sussex? Are you Meghan Duchess of Sussex?
Mm-hmm.
Is Markle even on your passport anymore? Is it, we don't use that term anymore?
Well, when I got married, I changed my name.
Yeah.
But it's a complicated one for people to understand because a last name is not typical in that construct.
I think we expect a last name, but is that a last name or is that actually
It's not, but
a
it's used roughly, or loosely rather. It sounds so silly to say, and I get it because I'm American, and then I went there and I started to understand, then you come back, and as an American you go, I'm so confused.
Yeah.
It's a dukedom.
A dukedom. That's a new word for me.
It's a dukedom.
Okay.
So, but that's the truth of it. But at the end of the day, you know, yes, so my legal name is Meghan, Duchess of Sussex. But Sussex, for us, works as our family name, and it's the name that we share with our children. And but yes, since we've been married, that's what I've been.
As Meghan's fame skyrocketed, marrying into the royal family, capturing global headlines, and stepping into the most scrutinised spotlight on earth, the contrast grew starker. Each speech about her truth only sharpened the hunger of skeptics desperate for the truth she left unspoken. Each carefully staged documentary, each interview framed around transparency, highlighted the shadows in her timeline instead of erasing them. The louder her voice became, the more deafening her silence on this alleged daughter seemed. And now, 3 decades later, with the calendar marking 30 years since those whispers began, the narrative refuses to fade into history. Instead, it echoes louder than ever, like a countdown. A ticking reminder that time doesn't erase secrets, it exposes them. The sealed records, the annulments, the missing gap years no longer look like random details. They look like puzzle pieces that belong to a story she never wanted told. This is the part Meghan Markle may fear the most, the possibility that the whispers could take shape, attach themselves to a face, and speak with a voice of their own. If the rumours hold any truth, that daughter would no longer be a hidden chapter. She would be a 30-year-old woman, fully capable of standing in front of cameras, holding her ground and telling her own story. And that single act would alter everything. It wouldn't take much. One headline, one live interview, one undeniable DNA test. That's all it would take for Meghan's carefully polished image to fracture. The narrative she built of being silenced, of reclaiming her voice, of surviving the crushing weight of royal life, would suddenly collide with allegations that she silenced the one person who mattered most. If her daughter decided to step forward, Meghan's brand wouldn't merely bruise, it would collapse, dismantled from the inside out. For decades, Meghan has allegedly relied on secrecy and silence, on sealed files and legal walls, to bury this chapter. But time is merciless. Children grow into adults, and adults don't remain quiet forever. The longer a story lingers in rumour, the more dangerous it becomes once it breathes. Because once her daughter, if she exists, steps out of the shadows, Meghan will no longer be the one writing the script. At that moment, Meghan's image wouldn't be framed by palace drama, Hollywood ambition, or the glossy appeal of her truth. Instead, it would be overshadowed by the voice of someone erased for 30 years. A voice that carries the weight of bloodlines, the weight of silence, and the power to upend everything the world thinks it knows about her. That wouldn't mark just another tabloid scandal. It would mark a definitive turning point in Meghan Markle's legacy. Because for 30 years, Meghan has thrived on reinvention. From actress to duchess, from royal rebel to global advocate, she's mastered the art of shifting roles and rewriting the story. But the past doesn't vanish. It lingers like smoke after a fire, waiting for the right moment to sting the eyes of those who thought they'd escaped the flames. The missing year, the annulled marriage, the sealed documents. These aren't loose ends, they're live wires, and every year that passes brings them closer to sparking. If the speculation is more than speculation, Meghan isn't just guarding old secrets. She's been living with a ticking clock. Because at 30 years old, that alleged daughter is no longer a rumour sealed in the past. She's a living person with her own will, her own truth, and her own power to redefine everything. And that's the ultimate risk. Meghan can stage interviews, direct documentaries, publish memoirs and craft sound bites, but none of it matters if reality walks into the light. Public relations can rewrite scandals, but bloodlines don't vanish. If the truth shows up at the doorstep, Meghan won't be holding the pen anymore. For now, it remains whispers, sealed records, and unanswered questions. But time has a way of prying open the stories people most want to keep closed. And when it does, the carefully polished fairy tale could collapse into something darker, more complicated, and impossible to control. And if you think this revelation is explosive, it may only be the opening act. Meghan's past is crowded with questions, with gaps in the timeline, with rumours the royal establishment and Meghan herself would rather never see the light of day. And yet, the clock is still ticking.